Welcome to Brother Owl's Garden. I'm very happy to see you here today. And we're going to be discussing a very, very timely and gravely important message that I think everybody, to varying degrees, has become innately aware of today. And for the sake of sharing and discussing that topic in an ongoing conversation, I have welcomed today a very good friend of mine. He's coming to us from Florida, and he's a great guy. He's somebody who's a natural mentor. Everybody who knows him tends to gravitate towards him for counsel and advice. And he's more than willing to help them and take them under his wing to the best of his ability. He is a very, very knowledgeable and pragmatic guy and an all-around good friend. Friends, welcome Dennis Cassa.
Thank you, Brian. And I'd just like to open up briefly with a little bit of a history of how we came to know each other. Brian and I met through a mutual friend that Brian knows from New Jersey, who spent some time down here in Miami, Florida. And I have a unique history in the sense that I often meet friends through friends, and I become closer friends with the secondary friend than I do with the primary friend. And Brian is an example of that. And even though he and I are very geographically far apart from each other, we've managed to keep in touch through email and occasional forms of communication. And now that Zoom has become a way of life since the alleged pandemic, we use that as well. So even though we're far apart, we write, we send each other articles, we think alike. And so we've always stayed in touch. I've had a number of other friends like that who I've barely ever met, but yet we correspond, we talk, we share things. And Brian's one example of that. So with that said, I'm here to collaborate with Brian on this. I've heard Brian, discuss various topics. And at a certain point, I was so engrossed in what he said that I said, well, I'd really like to be a guest on your program and share my own views. And Brian was very enthusiastic about that. So here we are today.
That's right, Dennis. And it is my great honor to host you. I will say out in the front that you are not of the typical standard ilk of the guests that I normally and very happily welcome. Yeah. And so things are going to be a little bit different here today. I do encourage all of our viewers to please stay with us to the end of the video. And also, thank you to those who make the effort of subscribing, sharing, and liking, because you help other people to find this content, which they may also find meaningful and useful and helpful. So thank you to those of you who find it in your heart to click subscribe. You're going to watch the videos anyway, but that helps other people to find us. So thank you. And just a quick side note, the mutual friend who's, best friend in the whole world is also a secondary friend to me, in the sense that I met him through another earlier friend myself. So same kind of dynamic there. And Ralph, shout out to you. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about, well, the enslavement of our species. And I'll just drop that and hand it over to you, Dennis.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian. And I have a lot to say on the matter. And what I can tell you is, at the outset of the alleged pandemic, and I continue to call it that, and I always will, I could sense immediately that something was in play, a plot, okay? I'm a person who's very perceptive about media techniques, about psychological manipulation types of techniques, and propaganda. I'm very intuitive about that, even though I wouldn't say I've extensively formally studied it, but I know it when I see it, okay? So what I remember is I was on a business trip up in the New York area where I'm originally from. I'm in a hotel room, and I'm then in the hotel lobby area just eating, and I am seeing the white hot intensity with which they were promoting this disease. And I insist on calling it promotion because they were, okay? I listened at first and said, okay, well, it sounds like this or that. It could be something fairly bad. I know they've reported on disease outbreaks in the past, but they just wouldn't let go. And that told me that this was being done with a plan and a purpose, okay? And that plan and purpose, in my mind, was to usher in global communism. And anybody who has studied the past, and I have numerous quotes that I photographed with my camera, they said, the way to get people to do what you want them to do is to frighten them, okay? People have testified at the Nuremberg trials that that is how they did it, okay? So obviously, when you have something that appears to be universal, you can frighten a large section of the population, not just in your own country, but throughout the world. So this is something that they very clearly rolled out throughout the world. Everywhere that you were or tuned into, the message was uniform and simultaneous, okay? And it was 24/7 bombardment, and it still is to this day, okay? It was on the TV, it was on the internet, it was on signage, okay? Everywhere you went. So all of a sudden, everything's in lockstep. All of a sudden, masks appear out of nowhere, okay? All of a sudden, there's 1 trillion boxes of masks dropped in every store, okay? How does that happen? Is the government ever that efficient with anything? I say not. Certainly not without warning, okay? Then hand sanitizer appears everywhere. Then there's all the signs that say, walk this way, walk in this direction, do this and do that. And what it clearly was to me was a form of obedience training and compliance conditioning. Get you used to listening to the message of the state, being told what to do, doing what you're told, and accepting the fact that you no longer have the power to make your own decisions with almost anything in life, okay? And that has just been beaten into everybody so relentlessly and in such a manipulative manner that most people, if they're not conscious of what's being done to them, it will diffuse into you and it will do what it is intended to do. And it has, okay? I've watched people that carry themselves a certain way throughout life, people that are old like me, I'm 60 years old, people that are my age and older, okay? Like I said, I'm conscious of these types of techniques and others are not. And I watched how gruesomely effective it was on the people who were not conscious of these techniques. And it worked so amazingly well. Now, why did it work well? Okay, first of all, they spent decades perfecting these techniques with behavioral psychologists, with various forms of experiments in things like social conformity and how to break people down and homogenize them and dehumanize them. There are a number of experiments that have been conducted over decades. And trust me, those results were compiled and studied, and techniques were developed and perfected out of that, okay? So all of this preparation was being done behind the scenes with no knowledge on the part of the public until this whole thing was unleashed on us. And there's so much evidence of pre-planning this entire thing. There's patents on the disease. There's patents on the testing kits that were awarded in 2015 for so-called COVID-19. Okay, let's add that up a little bit. Okay, so how did they? Boy, these people sure have a knack for predicting the future, don't they? Right? Okay, so clearly this was planned Coronaviruses have been tampered with since the 60s. Okay, so between virus tampering, psychological manipulation techniques and experimentation and all of this was being merged together with a plan and a purpose. Okay, and so what are all those different purposes? What do they want to do? Number one, the mask thing has been studied for about 70 years, and it is proven that they do not work against disease. Why do they so badly want us wearing them? Okay, look at a picture of a large number of people and see them all in masks. They're dehumanized. You see death in their eyes. They look like they're dead zombies walking. Okay, they love that. They get off on seeing people in that form. And what have they done to promote it? They always show pictures in the media of people masked up. I'll give you another example, okay? When it comes time to get vaccinated, allegedly vaccinated, we'll call it. You can decide for yourself whether it's a real vaccine, but regardless, okay? Have you ever noticed the ritualistic manner in which the vaccine is administered? Let's break that down, okay? Have you noticed that both parties are wearing masks? Let's take a closer look at that. This is something that most people just don't think their way through on, okay? Both people are masked. Okay, presumably, the one administering the vaccine is presumably already vaccinated, are they not? I would think so. If they're administering it, why would they not have it themselves? So if they're vaccinated, they're presumably disease-free and fully protected. So why would they need a mask? To protect themselves? To protect the subject coming in for vaccination? Why? I mean, they're bulletproof, right? And yet the other person coming in, why do they need a mask? To be protected from somebody who's already protected. Okay, what it shows is this is a ritual. Let's bow down to the corona gods. Let's pay homage to this whole silliness. This is what it's about, okay? And it's all these subliminal messages in order to say that there is this thing that is superior to us, and we must submit to the protection offered by our friends at the state. Okay? And all of these things are examples. And if you look at media propaganda, okay, because they're one and the same, here's another technique that they often use, okay? If they write about a certain topic, and let's say that topic is about a certain person, and maybe something happened that's perceptively bad for that person, they'll have a picture of that person going like, as if they're photographing them reacting to whatever they're writing about, okay? All they simply do is play some video footage, get the face that they want, freeze it, photograph it, and then paste it with the article, okay? All of these things are subliminal techniques that the average person doesn't see. I do see those things. And I know when my mind is being tampered with or being attempted to be tampered with, okay? So I'm going to start with that. And Brian, if you have anything to say in response to that, please do. Or if you'd like me to touch on anything else, hit me with your question.
As well as you know me, Dennis, you know I have a lot to say. And that's why we're here saying it. That's why we're here saying it, folks. Wow. Okay. You alluded to a point that I've made in at least 2 other videos, which is that obedience is not virtue. But so many people function from the unconscious presumption or programming that if I am obedient, then I'm a good citizen. I'm a good person. Well, I got news for you. The obedient people in Maui who obeyed the enforced roadblocks by the police department at both ends of the only road that ran through the main town died, incinerated in their cars. The people who followed orders and obeyed the inept captain of the cruise ship that sank in Korea a few years, who told them and ordered them to stay in their cabins, drowned. So if you would like to die as a virtuous, obedient peon, then that's the way to do it. Or if you would like to defend your sacred sovereignty and autonomy, which is not your right, it is your duty to do so. It is your right, but it is beyond your right. It is your duty to do so. Then you do what you inherently intuit and discern is right, proper, and good. And if it turns out to have been a mistake, I think it's forgivable. And rarely do I think it turns out to be a mistake anyway. You reminded me of a quote by my great friend, Bob Belcher. He emailed me today and he said, you know, bud, fear is the engine of power. Fear is the engine of power. Not only fear is being used to brainwash, manipulate, control, and mold people into the obedient, mindless automaton slaves that, I just call it the cabal to make it easy, wants us to be, but also shame. Shame if you don't conform. And that's where we saw, you know, they say the Karens, you know, these virtue signaling, admonishing, scolding people on the subways, the buses, and the Walmarts and everywhere else, and the restaurants, spitting on people. Everybody's got their phones, video, because everything, you know, that's how the consciousness is today. And shaming people who are like, nah, I'm not a slave. I'm not doing this. You're killing my grandparents, all that. You know, they use shame. Shame, by the way, is literally, there goes more noise from the cats. Sorry, I am flanked by 9 cats around me. It is evening.
And just to cut in for a moment, Brian, they were fed that stuff. Okay, they were fed that.
They were made to feel that they were like, you know, in the Cultural Revolution under Mao Zedong, they did that to those people too. They converted fellow citizens into Gestapos, and
snitches.
They believe that they're doing the right, good, virtuous thing for the collective. Now,
yes,
friends, viewers, we are not saying nobody died from this. We are not saying that it isn't an illness. We're not. I have a friend who died from it. But I'll tell you what, I have 5 or 6 friends who are suffering ongoing, serious physical health issues from having accepted a certain arm harm. And that's way worse. And the person who died, a wonderful, angelically good man, but he was also very, very overweight, literally didn't have a cigarette in his mouth, and subsisted on Coca-Cola. I'm sorry, those pre-existing factors compound the chances of being taken down by this thing. I had it twice. The first time I had it, I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to die from the pain. I've never experienced pain ever in my life, physical pain ever in my life than I did when I had it the first time. If there was a red button that said tap out, I might have hit it. It was so bad, I couldn't believe how bad it hurt. And it was 11 or 12 days, and then another period of recovery for almost another 2 weeks as well. And then the second time I got it, it was like, oh no, I'm getting it again. And by the end of the next day, it had passed through me. Maybe it has something to do with natural immunity having occurred after the first round. I don't know. And we're also not ignoring the possibility that the next wave that's launched, I mean that is accidentally escaped, I mean that mutates, okay. It could be far deadlier. And then it's going to squelch out the argument for a lot of people about standing up, resisting, and saying no. They might ramp it up to a point where it's going to be a pariah to resist the mandates and orders of the cabal. So That's a possibility, but let me finish my response with one, well, one or two quotes. This one is by Aldous Huxley. And we are, of course, not speaking about any of our viewers at all, but the humanity in general, okay? The greater part of the population is not very intelligent, dreads responsibility, and desires nothing better than to be told what to do. And to follow up that, I can tell you, where there are no slaves, there are no tyrants. There are no tyrants where there are no slaves. Slaves and tyrants are interdependent. Tyrants require slaves. Slaves require tyrants. We are focusing on the tyrants at the outset of our conversation, the global cabal of Luciferian Illuminati and all that other stuff that they are. Those that are bent on decreasing the human population to a fraction of what it is and instilling a feudalistic enslavement new world order upon everybody, and you will like it too. Those are the tyrants. But the tyrants require slaves. And who are the slaves? The fearful, the ignorant, the apathetic. They are the enablers of the tyrant's agenda. Do not be one of them, please.
The more you give in, the more you will get. So I recall in 2020, two of my brothers live up north and they have second homes on the west coast of Florida. I went to visit them. And my formerly conservative brother, who thought much like me for most of his life, maybe he's a little less of a conspiracy buff than I am, but he had conservative views, okay? And I told him, I said, they are not going to let go of this, okay? I'm going to tell you right now, you putting that stupid mask on your face and obeying in a do-as-you're-told society is only going to embolden the other side, and it will continue.
Dennis, you can't comply your way out of tyranny.
That's correct. And so I explained that. I said, when you die, if you keep this up, when you die and they open up your casket to show your body at your viewing, there will be a mask on your face. Right? It will probably, that's probably because it will have been surgically attached to you at a certain point. All right. But my emphasis was that they got us in their grip and they are not going to let go. So now, where are we in the calendar? Got it.
I just want to, if I could chime in only so I don't forget it. You said
Sure.
before that he's not on the same place on the spectrum of, you know, conspiracy theories and all that. I want to say something about conspiracy theories. For the longest time, people who entertained the possibility or considered or subscribed to what we would in general call conspiracy theories, which is a term that was invented by the FBI during the JFK assassination investigations, by the way, of which we have never been told the truth. But anyway, for the people that still scoff, you're a conspiracy theory, and they always seem to attach right wing and Nazi to those things too. But I think that the tinfoil hat has now become a crown, because the difference between a conspiracy theory and fact at this age in our lives is about 6 months, maybe, and decreasing, maybe 4 months.
It is.
And so for the people who still poo-poo and scoff and dismiss immediately what we would call a theory of a conspiracy, meaning this is not an accident, this is being planned and orchestrated as it's occurring, it's been engineered. I would like to ask these rhetorical questions. Have you ever heard the expression, there are no coincidences? Do you believe that coincidences exist? Do you believe, if you do believe in coincidences, that they are common? Do you believe it is rational or insightful to deduce that coincidence can explain away most of what happens in our world? If you discredit theories and explanations that one might call conspiracy theories, then you, my friend, are declaring that you attribute these concurrences as coincidences, and that makes you a coincidence theorist.
Right. I've used that term myself. So let's break this down, the whole conspiracy theory thing, okay? First of all, what is the definition of a conspiracy? It's simply two or more people, that's a low bar, two or more people planning and organizing in order to rig something in their favor, okay? If conspiracies didn't exist, yeah. If conspiracies didn't exist, why would there be a word with that definition? Number one. Number two, why would conspiracy be in the criminal code as a crime? So it might be conspiracy to commit robbery, conspiracy to defraud, conspiracy to commit murder. Okay. Why? Because people do that kind of stuff. Okay. They conspire. Most people don't act alone when they're committing crimes. Okay?
You know what, Dennis?
And
you know what, Dennis? When Judas Iscariot secretly met with the Romans to rat out Jesus, that is a conspiracy.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
But this is with thousands of people. And also it should be mentioned that a lot of them who are involved in it are not necessarily fully aware of the role they're playing. They are useful idiots. They are enablers.
Right. So for me, when I determine whether I believe something is a conspiracy and it's a concocted plan and all of that, I ask myself one simple question. Does it give the people in power what they want, which is inevitably more power, more wealth, more influence? And in the case of the alleged pandemic, it's a resounding yes. Okay. And when it comes to anything, whether it's the Maui fires or whether it's, is it benefiting the people, quote, at the top? Call them whatever you want, elites, Illuminati, whatever you want. Is it giving them what they want? And if it is, it's highly probable that people conspired to make it turn out that way. Okay. These types of things don't just happen. You ever notice that when things happen bad to the upper people of society, that guess what happens? The upper people of society get bailed out. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and you don't have to hunter around far to find people like that. But anyway, you reminded me of a quote by Jim Belcher. Jim Belcher was an American Army I can't remember his exact rank, forgive me, but he was in Army intelligence in Japan during the occupation. And a quote that he said that I've always remembered, which applies to what you just said, is, if you want to really understand the truth of what is happening, do not focus on the event or the incident itself, but rather focus on what resulted from the event. That's how you catch wind of what's going on, really. That's why what looks like a tragic wildfire in Lahaina can suddenly take on a very different appearance when you understand that the water was shut off, the cell phone towers were off, all of the children were told to stay home on their first day of school, and everything that was blue did not burn. And within 2 to 3 days of people who were grieving the loss of their family and missing loved ones and the destruction of all their possessions, were being propositioned to sell your land. And then the governor stepping in and saying, that's immoral, you can't do that. The government is going to do that. The state is looking into how to acquire your lands. All of a sudden, it doesn't look like it's a tragic accidental wildfire anymore. It looks like an engineered operation for the sake of installing a smart city, which is code for a slave pen. But anyway, the point that Jim Belcher made is, don't get fixated on the event. Focus on what results from that event. There's what's really going on.
Right. And so for me, what I've noticed is the people who always throw out the conspiracy theorist term are always people that are intellectually lazy. They don't want to take something apart and examine it under a microscope. And they resent the people that do because they're too lazy to do it. Okay. So I will go and I will look for facts and unbiased facts, true facts, indisputable facts that are backed up by the evidence. And I tend to take those things and I add them up. And then I weigh it against whatever the state's narrative or the official story is or whatever. And very quickly, I can tell when something doesn't add up. Okay. Number one, I have a devious mind. So I've learned to think like them. And I understand their techniques very well. If somebody told me to come up with a plan for an alleged pandemic, it wouldn't have taken me more than 10 minutes. Okay. All the stuff about asymptomatic transmission and all that, all of the things that were designed to maximize fear, confusion, and uncertainty. Okay. The best way to gain control of people's minds is to confuse them. Once they are confused, you know what they do? Here's what they do. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore. I'll just do what they tell me to do. Okay. And that's what intellectually lazy people do. That's what people that Brian alluded to from Aldous Huxley, who want to be told what to do, that's how they operate. And it's a shockingly high percentage of people who think that way and who act that way. Okay.
Yeah.
And therefore they are very
Dennis,
easy to manipulate and control.
Exactly. And let me weigh in just one last comment for
Sure.
We'll call them the scoffers. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. The scoffers are living as if conspiracies literally don't exist, as if manipulation literally doesn't exist, as if greed and evil literally do not exist, as if agendas do not literally exist, as if narratives do not exist, and as if deception itself does not exist. And
we're all just random people going through society.
And all that suggests to the contrary of those conclusions of the scoffers, all that suggests the contrary, that's just coincidence and nonsense. So to those people, we have nothing more to say except go back to sleep. Because if you are not awake, if you are not bug-eyed, jolted up at this point, man, where have you been?
There's no hope for you.
I think those people don't want to wake up or can't. And there are such people. And some will choose. Some will choose of their own free will. Blue pill, don't want to hear it, not into it, I'm out. Okay, well, that is your individual right as free will, a sovereign, autonomous being. However, please keep in mind that you are affecting the collective around you because you are an enabling slave. You are making it difficult for the rest who are waking up, as opposed to those who have been awake for decades, like you, Dennis.
So before and just to cut in on that one important point that you made is this, okay? Take masks as an example. People say, I don't want to wear a mask, but I don't care if others do, okay? I vehemently disagree with that, and I'll tell you why, okay? The fact that there continue to be people who do wear them, even if they don't demand I wear one, okay, that's still not good enough, and I'll tell you why. Humanity, with the exception of a brief period in 1918, lived without masks, okay? That's because the body was designed a certain way, and it's stood the test of time for however long humans have existed. So that tells me the body was designed pretty well. Do we all die someday? Yeah, we do, because we're mortal beings. But more importantly, okay, the idea that masks are a necessary aid to survival or lengthening of your life is so preposterous on its surface. Because, okay, but more importantly, as long as the people at the top see that there are people willing to do this, the following message gets sent: you can do this to us, and you can pull it off, because there are people that will obey. And as long as some people will obey, they will turn up the heat and turn up the pressure until they can get more and more people to do it. Now, how might they do that? That remains to be seen. They can either intensify the messaging, or they could roll out a more and more potent bioweapon to the point where even The anti-maskers are now going to say, well, maybe I should wear one. Okay. And they will have achieved their aim, which is to homogenize and dehumanize everybody. Okay. Have you ever seen any videos out of China where you see thousands of people walking in the street and they all got a mask on? Can you tell the people apart? Do they look like they're happy? Do they look like they're enjoying life and doing things out of their own free will? No, they look like they're people with chains on their arms and legs, even though there aren't any. Okay. And if the masks work so well, why did the biggest outbreak of COVID happen in China? If everybody's wearing masks, how did it happen? But yet it happened. Okay. So whether or not you follow randomized controlled trial studies, or whether or not you use empirical evidence, it's plainly obvious that they don't work. And it's plainly obvious that the people at the top know they don't work. Okay. There's another reason they want us in them. They are a symbol of silence, submission, and degradation.
There's something else about that. Have you noticed, such as at the coronation of King Charles, anytime there's a head of state visiting, a president or a dictator, whatever, you will see the feudalism in full effect. The peasants and the servants absolutely will be masked.
Yes.
And the big shots, the royalty, the elites absolutely will not be masked. And that's when I realized that viruses are classist. They don't affect people who are elite. They only affect people who are unimportant and servile. I had never known that about viruses. And I never knew if there was any paper in the New England Journal of Medicine or anything like that that knew that. But that's when I learned that viruses are prejudiced. They don't affect people who are big shots. I never.
And when you're in a restaurant, yeah, they don't pass as long as you're seated at your table. But when you're walking to your table, they are much more lethal and transmissible.
Right, and when cameras are off, the virus is inert. But when cameras are on, the virus wakes up and starts prowling around. These are things I never knew.
So it's plainly obvious to anybody with a discerning eye that this is all theater and it's all designed for something other than your health. Okay, they're worse than that. They're harmful to your health. Okay, you're meant to expel toxins. That's the way your respiratory system works. Okay, that's the way your detoxification system works. Breathe in imperfect air or take in imperfect food, expel the waste. That's the way the human body works. And to suddenly tamper with that, with the idea that you're going to suffocate yourself, you're going to trap the very pollutants that your body's attempting to expel and then re-inhale them is so preposterous that I can't even believe the people believe this kind of stuff.
And not just that, but the incredible damage, which is currently unfolding to us. It's not all known yet. It's unfolding to us. The damage that has been done to the children who were masked and kept out of school and kept out of church and temple and mosque and everything else, because you were allowed to go get wasted at the bar and the strip club, but you were not allowed to go to a place of worship, and it has nothing to do with tending to the wellness of your being suppressed. And, but the children have speech impediments, developmental disability. I want to say that a retardation of their verbal speech development, and they also
social development. Yeah.
In Japan, you're not going to believe this. In Japan, there are literally classes, group courses that are being offered. You can research this. I'm not making it up. For the number of people who do not really know how to smile anymore. And they are giving classes, teaching people, like Zoom conferences and stuff, teaching people how to smile. Because behind the mask, your expressing of emotions and everything was just switched off. nor could it be perceived if it was happening anyway. And so people have been alienated, and again, I constantly find myself using this word, disconnected from so much by this oppressive agenda, that we are screwed up now. And the children who are born into this, it is heartbreaking.
But that's what they want, okay? Look, the oldest technique in the world for gaining power is divide and conquer. So, number one, by getting people to wear the masks, number one, it creates this illusion the danger is out there, okay? There's stuff just floating around us, and we all have to be protected from it. Number two, when a person looks at a masked person, they eye them with suspicion, and they tend to stay away, and they don't view them as a normal functioning human being. And thirdly, when a child grows up developmentally disabled, I can assure you that that person will be a ready, willing, and able slave, because they will be so easy to manipulate and control. And as much as you can say, yeah, it's harming the kids and all that, that's what they want, okay? When they want to turn human beings into livestock, do you think that they care about the harm they're inflicting on you? No, they're celebrating it. They're in back rooms laughing, and they're saying to themselves, I can't believe how stupid these people are. If we knew it was going to be this easy, we would have rolled it out 50 years ago. Well, they got to be thinking.
I tell you what, Dennis, I'll use the word disconnect again. The astonishment and the shock at the realization that that is something they would want is also a result of disconnect.
That's
our
right.
Disconnect from that kind of a conniving, shrewd, manipulative, evil mind. Because we don't have that mind. We are stunned that somebody else could do such things, because look,
that's right.
On this channel in particular, we are 100% celebrating the sanctity of all life, the sovereignty of all life, the holiness, the innate holiness of being. And it doesn't mean that, like on some foo-foo other channel on TikTok, or woo-woo stuff that you'll hear other places elsewhere, it doesn't mean that everything's amazing. I don't get into that. In fact, that I get a bad taste in my mouth from that Pollyanna kind of. But so no, not everything is great, not everything is amazing, but that's only when it's not being what its true nature inherently actually is. When you stray from that is when you get
right.
the discord, the perversion, the malevolence, the evil, the stuff that, because we don't think that way, we have not been that corrupted. Humanity has been incredibly corrupted, incredibly corrupted. Look around at all the fruits of the corruption happening in the world today. And I'm one that says it's just getting started. I know there's a lot of others. Oh, Brian, you're being negative. You're okay. There's your propaganda that if I observe something that is an unpleasant reality, I'm being a negative person. I'm just observing and stating what I observe around me, and it does affect me. And I struggle with this person.
Well, why don't you just live your life and ignore that stuff? That's what people say.
Yeah, and then you are an enabling slave.
Right.
Because we have a duty. We have a duty that comes with our sanctity and our sovereignty, and that is to stand up and stand firm in it and defend it, defend against it. So
right.
Few are willing. Many are.
Yeah.
Thank God for them.
So back to 2020. I keep harping back on 2020, but here I am with my brother, and I'm telling him all this stuff, and he says, "Well, who's they?" And I go, "Who they are doesn't matter, but there's a they." All right. But what you don't understand is that these people aren't content with just being rich and having their yachts and going and living in their exotic homes all around the world. That's not good enough for them, okay? They want to dominate and control. Why are they like that? You can come up with whatever theory you want, but they are. And that's the part that you don't understand and or don't want to understand. Why would they? But why would they do that? Okay, because they're control freaks. That's what they became. They were either born that way or circumstances put them that way.
There may, Dennis, I'll just toss this in. There may even be another level of reality above them, and we're not going to make our conversation about that. But I just want to touch it and drop it. It may
Right.
very well be that there is a higher level above them, and by that I mean above humans, who is basically manipulating them on their behalf in this realm. You know,
Mhm.
as I said before, don't feed the archons. There are
Right.
very likely manipulative, malevolent entities, not that they all are, but those that are above even the cabal.
Yeah. So now back to the calendar. Okay. So I said back in 2020, they are never going to let go of this. Where are we now? We're 4 years in, and they are not letting go. They
Correct.
gave the
You
impression.
did say that, and I remember you saying that, and I'll vouch for that. I do remember you saying
Right.
that long ago.
Good. Good. Thank you. And they gave the illusion that they were letting go for a while. Okay. Now, psychological studies show that in order to achieve maximum torment of the victim, you do it in waves. You don't keep it steady and constant. So if you look at people that are in abusive relationships, let's say somebody takes up with a narcissistic personality disorder type, and that person is psychologically tormenting them. They also mix in periods of loving and affectionate treatment, and then they go back to the abusive stuff, to the point where the person's mind is just so lost that they're like somebody being dragged around by a collar, and each new wave has been shown to be successively more effective because you already have the original effect implanted in your brain and it's lying dormant and it's just waiting to be reawakened. So now what are they doing? Okay. They're doing the same thing of cases are on the rise. All the trigger words, surge. That's one of the favorite words of that side, surge. Okay. And then it's super spreader, even the use of the term COVID itself. Okay. And in the end, they're even using the same techniques of uncertainty, which is you can actually transmit the disease before you have any signs of illness. Okay, that's the old asymptomatic transmission lie that they're resurrecting and they're bringing back up. Okay, so what it shows is they are going right back full bore to the 2020 playbook, and they are going to probably exceed what they did the other time.
They are using people's compassion against them as a weapon in a case like that, because none of us wants to think, oh my God, all I did was go visit my elderly parents and I killed them because, this kind of thing. I didn't even know I had it, but little did I know that I caught it on the plane on the way over. And then, I don't want to do that. And I don't want to do that either. And that is a concern. That is a practical, realistic concern. And that's why people who understand what's going on once in a while will say, I'll throw the mask on anyway, just to cover that concern.
And at least I'll be guilt-free if something does happen.
Well, I mean, I did what I could. I wore my mask and I put the alcohol rub on my hand, or alcohol gel and all that. And who could say? And you got to understand that there's a certain balance, a certain reasonability to that too. I don't think I'm as vehemently against people's right to wear masks or the option to wear a mask as you are. My attitude is, if you want to wear it, go ahead, do it. That's up to you. But like most other political and social narratives, you don't really have the right to tell everybody that they must do what you've decided is right. And I know that there are those who will disagree with everything we've said or some of it. You have to sacrifice the individual for the collective. And when does the collective sacrifice itself for the individual, though? So it's sometimes not easy, is what I'm saying, to find the balance. It's just not that easy, you know. And as I alluded to earlier in the conversation, what are we going to do when they launch the next one, which all signs say hands are rubbing right now, buttons are about to be pushed, that kind of stuff.
They're conditioning us for that.
But what do we do if it is 10% fatal, 20% fatal? What do we do then? What do you do when it really is way worse? Even though it's just the agenda ramped up, but on a biological level, this one really is way worse. What then? So,
well, you know, so it even goes beyond the disease part of things. So now they're trying to control our lives in countless other ways in terms of what we can do, how far we can travel, how much we can consume, what types of things we can consume, whether it's a certain type of food, whether it's the carbon footprint, you know, and all that other stuff. All those things, okay? There's a very famous quote that said, "The greater good has always been the alibi of tyrants." Okay, that's a quote that I burned into my mind when I first read it.
Say it again for us. I like it. Say it again.
The greater good has always been the alibi of tyrants.
That's a new one to me, and I like it. I wanted to make sure everybody heard it.
So somebody sent me a TikTok video about 2 weeks ago, and I'm not a big one of those guys, but it was this one woman reading like robotically. "Wear this on your face. It's for the greater good. Stay home and let your business fail.
Do it for the children.
It's for the greater good." And she read off like 20 different things. Okay. And it's all these things that are supposedly for the greater good that are going to stifle you as a human being.
And we can put that side by side with, "I was just following orders."
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Okay.
Yeah. I was just following orders. That's what the policeman who blocked people from escaping a raging avalanche speed inferno that incinerated Lahaina.
Right.
Blocking them. You are not allowed to get out. You are not allowed. You must stay there and incinerate. Yeah. Why?
So
I'm just following orders. That's what I was told. Good job. Good job, slave.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is something I also want to not only touch on, but expand upon. And that is the do what you're told society. I'm just following orders. I cannot tell you how much I encounter that in everything I do in life. And I keep getting that same robotic response out of people. I could call up a call center and say, well, you know, I have this sort of problem and I need somebody to kind of step out the bounds a little bit and solve the problem. Well, I can't, you know, it's company policy. I'm under order not to do that. I went into a Walgreens one day, and so I'm at one of those stupid little self-checkout things, which requires you to do like 50 steps. And I don't do this every day, so I'm clumsy with the machine. And eventually, some zombie with a mask on that's an alleged employee standing behind the counter that they would have checked me out of comes out from behind the counter and pushes the button for me and says, "Oh, you got to do this." And I said, "Is there ever going to be a day where you guys go back to human cashiers?" She just throws up her hands and said, "Well, I just do what I'm told here." Okay. And I said, "Yeah, so did the guards at the concentration camps."
Yeah, do what you're told until do what you're told until AI takes your job and does what it's
right. But more importantly, okay, if she's back behind, if the reason she cannot be a live cashier is because she can't get close enough to me because she might catch a cold, she has to get even closer to me when she has to come up to the stupid machine and push the buttons because I'm not sure what to do. So they just defeated their own purpose, okay? Which proves the absolute folly in the whole thing. And all of the things that, once again, are how does it benefit the elite? Did you notice that during the early stages of the alleged pandemic, they suddenly said you can transmit the disease with cash. How convenient. Oh, well, I guess we got to get off of cash and go to a cashless society, right? Because if you hand somebody a nickel or you hand somebody a $10 bill and they got to make change, well, we're going to be passing germs all over the place. Okay?
But hold up, Dennis. I have to put out a disclaimer. This is not to insinuate in any way, shape, or form whatsoever that the ultimate end game therein is to issue a CBDC, which is going to become a global currency CBDC that is manipulable and controllable and limitable and shut offable by the people in power, and that they're going to force all of us under this system where they will give you a UBI, remove your entire sense of pride and accomplishment and dignity in earning your living, and then restrict where, how often, and on what, and to what distance from your home you are allowed to spend your own money. And if we don't like how you think or what you say, we'll just shut it off and block you, which they already do in the glorious communist Chinese government. The CCP already does it with their social credit system. So we just want to say that it's definitely not in any way connected to that, other than the fact that it totally is.
Oh, it's just coincidence. Yeah. They wouldn't do that to us. No. I mean, they have good intentions. You know, they really care about us.
Yeah, this is just another one of those coincidences.
Right. The amazing thing is, before 2020, people understood that getting sick was an occupational hazard of being a live human being that moves about through society. All of a sudden, you cannot get sick, and if you do get sick, you're a criminal. You're guilty of a crime. And if nobody can prove you're sick, you have to prove that you're not sick. That's a guilty until proven innocent society. Okay, and that is the entire turning inside and out of the innocence of human life, or at least the presumed innocence of human life. You're supposed to be presumed innocent until proven guilty if you're accused of a crime, okay? And it should be the same without society. And if you're walking around and you don't show visible signs of sickness, you should be presumed to be safe to be around, okay? That you're not some kind of a leper and all of that. But again, they want to do this because ultimately, to dehumanize you, they have to treat everybody as a presumed leper. Now, another person that I follow quite a bit, who I never heard of until recent years, is Naomi Wolf. And she was once a flamer on the other side politically, and she has had a conversion. And she's Jewish. She studied past genocides, and she said every genocide throughout history was preceded by the exact kind of behavior that has been exhibited over the last 3 to 4 years. Every single one of them, without exception.
Yep. And you know, Dennis, another aspect of what enables that is the category or demographic of people that look to authority and government as parent figures. Tell me what to do, mommy. Rule me harder, daddy. Those are the people. Rule me harder, daddy. Those are the people who are wallowing in their slave mentality and holding everybody else down. They are the very crabs in the bucket that pull the escaping crabs who had the better sense back into the bucket.
Yep. And the funny thing is that anytime you challenge anything, you're the one being political. You know, they always like to throw that, oh, you're being political about this.
Well, there are traits and commonalities and overlaps that people can, you know, we don't even want to make this about politics. People can see what they can see, and people cannot see what they will not see anyway. So we'll just leave that. But I want to talk more, Dennis, if we could steer it a bit towards, we've talked enough about the cough, okay? Now, we mentioned the CBDC enough to have presented that as an issue. Let's talk about smart cities. And I'm going to preface it by saying anything that has the word smart in front of it is code for slave. Please know that, people. Your smart meter in your home is a slave meter. You are being
Your smart
monitored,
TV.
and you
Yeah.
are being, they are monitoring you and observing you, and they are talking about, which means they've already begun it, having the right and the ability through the smart meter, the slave meter, to shut you off. You know what? The air quality today is just not as good as we would like it to be. And even though it is 43 degrees Celsius, we're going to shut off people's power for the next 6 hours because climate. And begin.
Well, once again, it's the old playbook: problem, reaction, solution. So
Beautiful.
they either create a real life problem, an actual existing problem, and or they manufacture the illusion of one. And then the next thing they do is they either engender a reaction on the part of the public, or they report on an imaginary reaction on the part of the public, which I think it's some of each. And then, hey, here we are. We're going to swoop in and save the day with the solution, because we're your solution makers. We're your problem solvers, and we're just here for the good of everybody. We care about you. So we're going to put in this tyrannical solution, and all you got to do is just do what you're told, and everything will be okay. If you don't, you will end up in a gulag, starving and freezing to death in some concrete cell, where that's your the concrete is both your floor and your bed. Okay? That's where you're going to end up if you don't do what you're told, because they are moving the world in that direction. This has all been done before.
And it's not just the CBDC that is going to be forced upon us by an orchestrated, engineered global financial collapse that is imminent. And it's not going to be just the smart cities that are corralling all of the slaves into pens, but it is also this incessant push for electric vehicles, which absolutely have a far greater and far worse environmental footprint, so to speak. They're so much worse for the environment. They ignite in flames that cannot be put out with water. They're going to be burning people's garages and apartment buildings because of the failures of the batteries, which are all made in China, the great ally of freedom. And it's not just that, but it is also, again, corralling everybody in with a leash to the electrical grid, which I will say in the United States is decrepit and absolutely positively cannot handle the electrification of everybody's personal vehicles. Until
Not that they care, because it'll just disable people further. They don't care.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's a control tool. It's a control tool.
But they can be shut off. We don't like your opinion. We saw that you said something on Twitter X that we don't like. Shut off your car, or shut off your car by shutting off your power, or restricting your smart meter. I'm telling you, friends, if it has the word smart in front of it and also electric, you are controlled. You can't,
smart.
You don't have another option to handle it on your own. If it is freezing cold outside, but climate, we're going to shut off this city's meters. We're going to shut off these people's access to electricity who were using electrical heaters, and you're going to freeze for the night. The UK is several steps ahead in this insanity. I have friends who live in London and around different parts of the UK. I even have 2 friends who chose to willingly move there in the past year and a half. What are you doing? The UK is the absolute spear tip of globalist, green freak insanity. Do I hate the planet? Do I want to destroy it and contaminate it and all that? No. But what they're doing is not for the earth. It is for control. And they're using that as the premise. I think somebody has got to have seen this besides us by now.
So once again, just remember this quote: the greater good, or at least the perceived or presumed greater good, has always been the alibi of tyrants. It's throughout history, they've always used that to impose collectivism and ultimately tyranny so that everybody walks, runs, and moves and eats in lockstep.
Yep. And so many of us are unfamiliar with history. We are ignorant. And also, much of the written history is inaccurate and deceptive anyway. But so much of what has happened so far in humanity is not known by the younger generations. You've seen the videos of, man on the street asking simple questions. Who is the vice president of the United States? What is the capital of Canada? Oblivious. People can't even answer. They can answer like 5% of questions correctly. It's astonishing. And they even do this at universities in the United States.
I've seen those videos.
It's staggeringly dystopian, unbelievable. So, Dennis, we've covered a lot. Let's pull it into, for those who are awake and willing, and to whatever degree of able, because that does vary. I have a friend with 10 children. I wouldn't expect him to be able to do one thing about this. But I know a lot of other people who could do a whole lot. And some of them have done it. And some of them are being very motivated and inspired as we speak to do it. And others are starting to wake up to, I should have been doing this, huh? But there's also that group that we're just going to scuttle them. Can't be saved. We're not ready to deal with them. But for those who are still with us in this video, and thank you. Those who are listening, those who are saying, what can I do? So what do I do about it? I posit the question, so what can the individual do about it?
Okay, that is something that I have commented on in after videos and after articles, because I often set myself up with an idea where I could write comments, and I frequently do. So if you go back to certain mandates like the mask or the vaccine, okay, well, I got to take it. I mean, I needed it for my job. Okay. There are examples of where people did ultimately resist and they won out. Okay. In the beginning, it didn't happen. People simply said, well, I guess I got to take it. If I lose my job, I go somewhere else, and they're probably going to say, well, you got to have it or we're not going to hire you. So what the hell? I might as well just take it and hope for the best. Okay. But then there was a story in New York City about the healthcare system running into a shortage of qualified healthcare workers, and the whole healthcare system in New York was at risk of collapse. And ultimately, what they did was they dropped the mandate, and eventually they called back, nurses, doctors, and other people in that field. So what that showed is that if enough people say no, they ultimately cannot function. The business cannot function, the healthcare system cannot function, whatever other key elements of society can't function, okay? Because they ultimately, for now, not much longer perhaps, need people, okay? And one thing that I think people failed to do was, and again, this is, I believe, the result of the divide and conquer operation that was incredibly effective. Isolate people, make them afraid to talk about it with other people, okay? Do not be afraid to talk about it with other people. If they want to call you a kook or whatever it is, let them, okay? They're the ones that are weak, not you. Don't you be weak and cave in to their peer pressure that they're imposing on you, okay? So to take that further, let's say that you work at a company and there's 50 employees, and the company says every one of you got to show up every day and wear a mask from the time you arrive till the time you leave, and even while you're eating, just take it off in between bites. Okay. If everybody simply got together after work and said, you know what, why don't we all just say, you either retract this mandate or we're all walking out, and you could say goodbye to your business. Okay. That's where it's not just the power of no, it's the power of unionizing. And if you go back to the labor wars, right, it was about unionizing. Now, that doesn't mean you go back to forming formal unions and official unions, but if people unofficially band together and say, look, we have the power to refuse if we all agree to do that. Now, you might, maybe the question is how many people among the group are going to be refusers?
Well, I hear you. I get it. I do not believe that people will do that. I do not believe that the majority of people have the courage, principles, and ability to endure the consequences of that. For example, my friend with 10 kids, he cannot be in that group, and he will not be in that group. And he thinks
Oh,
like
yeah, and I wouldn't count him. Yeah.
but he agrees with us. But if here's what it is. The mandates, the fiats, the orders.
But if enough of them do, I think it can happen.
If enough of them do, then some of the more timid ones feel encouraged to join the momentum.
And emboldened.
But for everybody to say, no, we're literally going to walk out and leave if this isn't, and then how are you going to support your the American people in particular? I think in Europe and America in particular, the economic situation is like a boot to the neck right now, and everybody is feeling it, and most people are way into suffering mode. And again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like a doomer and all that, but I just think it's going to get worse. But and maybe it'll get better after that. We hope. But the thing I'm trying to say is, I don't think that most people can have that option realistically to do that. I just don't think they do.
But I would say at least go around and take a poll if you can. Okay. And if you have a company of 50 employees and enough of them walking out would severely cramp that company, then maybe you get to 20 and you say, look, the other 30 are willing to do what they're told, but us 20 are not. And if you don't do this, we're going to walk. Okay. I don't care. Okay. Because I'm the type of guy, and I'm only speaking for myself here, but I've always been the type of guy to live within my means. Even in these tough economic times, I make sure of that so that I'm never forced into that position. Okay. That is a position of dependency on your employer, dependency on, let's say, the steadiness of your income or the desire to maintain a certain standard of living and all of that. Okay. I want a nice standard of living too, but at the same time, I moderate it to the point where I can have enough things that matter to me, and I'll sacrifice other things simply because it will leave me in a position where I have a cushion, I have a parachute. And if I'm ever in a situation where either I can't or don't want to continue what I'm doing, I have the option. Now, can I do that forever? No, but that doesn't mean I can't do it for a year or 2 years or whatever and still survive.
And that's why I said earlier, to the degree that you are able, because that's going to vary all over the map.
Right. Of course.
But yeah, you've brought up a good point. Debt, the more debt you have, the more you are enslaved. And the more dependent you are, the more you are enslaved. And also, the more decadent you are, the more you need cushy, luxurious, high-end type of living and accessories and amenities, you're a slave. And the fourth one is, if you have addictions, you're a slave. And we all fall somewhere in that spectrum, somewhere, the points could be made that, maybe with the addiction thing, I'm way up here or down here, and maybe the dependency thing, I'm way over here, whatever. But debt, dependency, decadence, and addiction. And that's just coming off the top of my head. There's your realistic enslavement level. And now, when the authorities come and mandate to you, for example, you will own nothing, and by the way, you will be happy. The second part is also a mandate. People think of it as, oh, wow, it's going to be great. No, that's also a mandate. In other words,
it's a rub it in your face is what it is.
We're taking everything and you're going to like it. That's what that's what it is. That's why I said with the electric cars, until we are not allowed to own personal vehicles, which is the next step in that agenda anyway. But
Right.
there are definitely varying degrees. There are single moms out there, I should say single parents out there who they're not making it, and things are getting worse, and inflation's getting worse, and wages are stagnating and even lowering, and AI is knocking people out of their jobs. 80% of jobs typically held by women are under direct threat of replacement by AI. Do you realize what that is going to do to half of the workforce when 80% of them are replaced by AI? Because it's coming.
And society in general, because look at how dependent economically most families are on a two-income situation. Okay, in order to have a marriage and kids, or cohabitation and kids, you need two salaries to support that, because housing is so expensive and all that. So let me bring things back to my own situation as a little bit of an illustration of a dilemma that people face. Okay, the whole own nothing, you will own nothing, and you will be happy. Okay, so what they say is a society that doesn't own things is a society of slaves. Okay, so now I want to take my own situation here. I own a home. I own a high-rise condominium in Miami, and that thing is becoming an increasing financial death trap. Not only because of the ordinary costs, but what also is happening, which I believe is engineered probably by BlackRock and all of that. Okay, they are now, all the insurance companies are running away from not just my state, but other states. And they're also saying, we are now not going to include coverage in insurance policies for natural disasters. Okay, well, what the hell's the point of insurance if you're not going to cover that? So now if my home is uninsurable and it gets blown to bits, I'm a little bit different in a condominium, but if I had a single family home and my home gets blown to bits and it's uninsurable, number one, will I have the money to rebuild? Just one second. And number two, will my mortgage holder, if I have a mortgage on the home, suddenly say, your balance due is payable in 30 days and we're going to foreclose on you? So I'm sitting here with the dilemma of maybe I should just sell my place, get out from under it, get out from the massive liability that's increasing every year, and just go to a more modest area and rent and simplify my life. And that way, if I ever don't like a situation, I can just pack up and go. Okay, so that's a dilemma that I'm facing, which means I would forego ownership, and now I'm not part of the ownership society anymore, and therefore I'm just a slave trying to survive. But home ownership is its own form of slavery and shackles, no matter what you might want to think. Okay, Brian.
Yeah, I totally agree. And they are pushing everyone to become renters, and it's becoming almost like you can't do anything about it. And not only that, but there is a dramatically increasing number of Americans who are simply not paying their home insurance anymore. They just can't. And at the same time that we're having all of these mysterious waves of fires and floods and dam breaks and tornadoes and hurricanes going berserk and everything. So at the time when the risks are going exponentially up, an increasing number of Americans simply can't pay their home insurance, and they're canceling it. But if you're on a mortgage, you're legally obliged, you're obligated to pay that.
That's correct.
So I just, my heart goes out to the people who are experiencing that. I don't know that there's a solution. I really don't know. But the other thing regarding home ownership is, the green freak movement, okay, where now they are mandating, and I'm sure you're aware of this because of your connection with real estate and everything else, they are mandating upgrades, which are ridiculous for current property owners, building owners, and you will comply and upgrade your property to this new greeny standard, whatever, or you will be incomprehensibly fined and jailed. And that's coming. So that, of course
it is.
Who's
Yeah.
going to want to be entangled in anything? And I think it was Henry David Thoreau that suggested you should always live a life where you could pick up and leave at any minute if you wanted to for any reason. But there's a level of transience and instability that also engenders, which is
It
not,
is. It
not
is. And
good
then you
for a
don't know.
family. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I prefer the stability of home ownership, but it doesn't bring stability anymore. That's the problem. That's the old model, is that it brought stability. It no longer does. It brings uncertainty. It brings increasing demands. It means a loss of control. Okay. You are now being dictated what you must buy, what you must spend on, what you must do to maintain, and all of that. It's not your home anymore. It's the state's home, and you're simply there to pay the bills. Okay. So for me, home ownership has become handcuffs, financial handcuffs. And that's why, to me, it no longer brings what it used to bring, in my mind, anyway. Now, for some others, maybe it does. And if you're really well off and money's no object, okay, then you're fine. Own your home and enjoy what comes with it. But for people who want to keep below their means, like myself, and want to have a simple life and don't want to be told what to do every minute of the day, it's losing its appeal with me. And why not just take my equity and whatever else I have and live off of that, plus whatever income I generate, through my business endeavors. But that, to me, is a simpler, less stressed life, as opposed to what the hell's going to happen when I open up my mailbox? What other bad news am I going to get? Okay. I'm at the age where nothing good comes in the mail. Okay. The best thing in life for me is when I open up my mailbox and there's nothing in it. Because anytime that mailbox opens up, somebody's either demanding I do something, demanding I buy something, demand I spend increased amount of money. There's nothing good in the mail anymore for me. Okay. So all of those things are examples of how society is just squeezing in on us. Okay. And so once again, I'm going to go back to the BlackRock thing with my devious mind. Okay. Chances are BlackRock either owns or has very large stakes in the insurance companies, and they probably have very large stakes or absolute ownership in the banks and mortgage lenders. So if they simply tell the two to work together and say, well, you deny the policies and you refuse to extend credit or foreclose on people who don't have insurance, guess what? It creates a whole big giant pool of distressed sellers. And oh, by the way, we BlackRock with our $30 trillion, we're the cash buyer of last resort. Oh, how nice, right? So look,
Dennis,
I can't prove any of
that. You don't have to say more. I think you just nailed it. And I think that it's even been reported. I've seen in other YouTube channels. I don't want to speak the wrong thing, but it either is almost there or it is the imminent goal that home ownership in the United States of America very soon will reach less than half private ownership.
Right. And look, the goal of communism is to eliminate private property ownership. Are they going to do that overnight?
Yeah.
No, they're not. Okay. But the lowest rungs of people financially are going to capitulate. They simply will have no choice. And then gradually what they'll do is they'll raise taxes. They'll do enough things to say, for even the wealthy people to say, it isn't worth it anymore. Okay. I'm out of here. Okay. And maybe they sell to the ultra rich, and all you have is a feudalistic society where the top 10% own homes and the other 90% rent. Now, in order to combat, I think, the increasing rent crisis, I think what you're going to get is a roommate society. I think enough people are going to double up to say, well, we have to control the demand enough to control the price. That's what I think is going to come.
And that, Dennis, and I know I'm going to sound like I'm so negative and I'm pessimistic. My God, the problems that is going to cause.
Of course.
Social, domestic problems, and all of that nebula that goes with it. SA, lawsuits, RAPE, all of this kind of thing, where gee, our roommate thing didn't work out because he's a this and she did that, and now we're,
Right.
good grief, the social angle that is going to create. Uh,
So I liken this to, they talk about storm chasers and they say, well, if you see a tornado, you should never try to outrun it. Okay. Don't get in your car and try to drive away from the tornado that's in your rear view mirror, because you don't know the direction in which it's going to travel. And you might find yourself getting right in the vortex and get sucked up in the tornado. But I'm using that as a metaphor because I feel like we are going to spend the rest of our lives trying to outrun a tornado, a man-made tornado, and one that doesn't dissipate. The ones that come out of nature, they dissipate pretty quickly. But this one is a man-made engineered tornado that, how do you get it to dissipate? They're the ones at the controls, okay? And they're the ones that are creating it, and who knows what other things they might be doing in order to create disasters. I have my suspicions, as do you probably, Brian, but all of this fits a puzzle, okay? And my devious mind at work, this is what I see. Again, this is not an accident, okay? Don't ever say that this type of thing, oh, it just happened that way. It doesn't, because why? Think about who it benefits. Always think about that. And it's very clear that this benefits the people at the top. And anytime
Dennis,
something benefits, yeah.
Dennis, even when it is not deliberately, willfully created for the purpose, it is hijacked for the purpose.
Exactly. Yep. And so in the end, it's funny how the people at the top never seem to lose. And on the rare occasions that they do, they just siphon the money from the little Joes and Josephines out there that make up the 90% of the population, like the bank bailouts from, 15 years ago. Heads they win, tails we lose. And, the most frightening part about it is, if you look back through history, and I have a close friend in my building that's a retired CIA guy, and so he naturally knows a lot of things. He's also a highly devout Christian, and so he has his beliefs, and so he told me that throughout history, man gets pushed to their limits, and eventually they just go crazy, okay, and they fight it off. And I said, okay, but let's look back at those times. How long ago did that happen? 1700s? Okay. It was man against man. Maybe one man had more rocks than the other man, or more javelins to throw, or whatever. But the fact is, it was basically man against man. The difference today is much more vast between what they have and what we have. First, what they have is 50 plus years of meticulous planning behind the scenes that nobody knew about. So combine that with heads of state, banking, which gives them unlimited funding, corrupt courts, big tech, big pharma, militarized police forces, big media to psychologically torment people. Add all of that up, the advantages on the other side are astoundingly enormous, okay? And what do we have? We don't have any funding, not compared to them anyway. We got a few people with pea shooters, which amount to nothing compared to what they have. And more importantly, we don't have the organization that they have. They organized behind the scenes with no resistance and not even any knowledge on the public's part. We have to organize at a time when we're more divided than we've ever been before. So when you take into account the enormous technological things that are either already implemented or on the verge of being implemented, that is going to be really tough to overcome. You can't argue with a machine and think that the machine is going to have empathy and is going to let you through, or let you buy this or let you buy that. It's simply going to be, there might be somebody at the point of sale terminal, an order follower, right? I can't override the system. I'm sorry, but you can't buy that.
It's getting to the point where it's Skynet. Hey, what can I do? My hands are tied. Skynet says no. What's that
Right.
British sitcom? Computer says no. I don't remember the name, but computer
Yeah,
says no. And there it is.
but
What do you want from me? Computer says no.
right. So any way you look at it, right, or if you got to pass through an airport security grid or something like that,
Yeah, you'll
okay?
be trying to buck the AI system, not
Right.
even.
You could say no all you want. You could say I will not comply all you want. But when you got iron gates and a machine that runs them, your willpower doesn't amount to anything.
All
Okay.
right, all
So
right. So let's pivot. Let's pivot, Dennis, because I want to wrap this up now.
yeah.
There are still things that in principle we can do until we can't do them anymore. And hopefully we can outlive this incredible tsunami of tyranny that has descended upon our planet and our species. The first thing I want to say is stop laughing at preppers, stop mocking the tinfoil hat community, and stop scoffing at what you consider to be conspiracy theories and all that, and wake up if you're not already awake. And if you can't, you're lost. We're not going to waste any energy on people like that. The second thing is get prepared for a world that you can't function in anymore. Okay. What I mean is get out of the cities. Those are the incubator slave pens. Get out of them if you are able. If you opt not to, no more to say.
Prisons.
Good luck. Okay. Get away from densely populated areas and do not bring your urban brainwash illness with you to the new place that you go to move. Leave it behind. Okay. And remember that there's something called the 100 times rule. Remember that if you prepare now, while the infrastructure, supply chain, and materials are still mostly available, because that is dropping by the day, it is 100 times easier for you to prepare for adverse conditions or catastrophes or difficulties that are so obviously coming, orchestrated, than it would be to do so after the fecal matter has impacted the climate device. Okay. So the question is, in preparing, would you rather be a few years early or would you rather be 1 second late? So prepare, get out of cities if you can. Weigh out the options of if I don't, what is the cost of that? If I do, what is the cost of that? Is it possible? Can I relocate my family? The more entangled and involved you are, the harder it is for you. I understand that. I understand that not all of us are single. Not all of us are able to cut and leave everything we've ever known. Some of us have done it. Some of us are doing it. Some of us never will. Some of us literally can't. I understand that. But do what you can with what you've got where you are, as they say. And I'm encouraging everybody openly, have a garden if it's possible. Oh, where I live, I can't have a garden. Can you have a few pots and have a mini potted garden? Can you do a space saving garden where you grow literally in PVC pipes that are mounted on a wall that has sunshine? Research these things. It's not hard. Store your staple foods, rice, which is, I warned people some weeks ago, get all your rice now. Well, rice is already at approximately 15 to 16-year high right now. And it's only going to get worse. And India just stopped 100% of rice exports. And Thailand, who is the second world exporter of rice, is doing the same. So, but don't listen to me. I'm a nut job conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat guy. Wheat, oil, and your necessary medications or whatever you need. Have some gold and silver. Get replacement parts for the machinery that you can't live without now, while you might be able to get it, and you still might wait months to get it. Have a first aid kit handy in case there's no other care available, because you need to be your own EMS. You need to be your own central bank. You need to be your own savior. And do as much as you can. Grow the garden. Store up your food. What am I going to do with all the stored food? Chisel away and consume it at one end and replace it at the other end, keeping in the middle a 3 to 6 month store of those foods as you are able, whatever you're able to do. Okay. And what if you planted a big garden and, oh, what am I going to do with all these vegetables? Share them with people who need it, or use them as barter, trade for other
Right.
things that you
Trade
don't
them for
have.
other things.
Yeah. And maybe feed your entire family on it and no longer be dependent. Okay. And when you grow a garden, for those of you that will, try to grow plants that are what I call cut and come again. Malabar spinach, if you live in a very warm climate all year, like here in Thailand, Malabar spinach is a godsend. It's incredibly nutritious, triple the vitamin C that traditional spinach has. And you just cut it, and what does it do? It grows back more. So the more you cut it and eat it, the more it gives you. And it lives for years and years and years. It's not a one-time cut it and done like a head of cabbage or lettuce. Cut and come again. Grow as much of that kind of stuff as you can, and have as many other options outside of the slave system as possible. You might be forced, which I think is bitter and disgusting, but you might be forced to enslave yourself in the coming CBD system because your employer capitulated and will only pay you in that because the government said so and all that. But what if you've got a nice pile of what they call junk silver that you can barter with, or you have a huge vegetable garden with lots of vegetables that you can trade with neighbors and other things? Develop a sense of community and interdependence and interreliability with people. Keep your car gas tank filled all the time. When you hit a quarter gas tank, fill it again in case you have to leave and need a full tank and there isn't gas, or you can't get it, or you don't have time. Oh, you're promoting fear. No, I'm promoting preparedness in case things go wrong, which they have in history. Because if you are ignorant, you are a potential victim. Ignorance enables vulnerability. Preparedness creates the likelihood that you will survive it, you will make it through. There's so many things that we could say, but that's a real good start. And just try to create as many options outside of the slave system as possible, and wean yourself off the slave system as much as you possibly can for as long as you can. That's all.
Well, I think the other important message that needs to be conveyed to people, not just viewers here, but people everywhere, is this. What they're implementing is the absolute elimination of free choice. Okay.
Free will.
And for now, you have a choice to either accept that, which will be a trap that you probably will never be able to escape, or you can at least make the choice to, if not eliminate, reduce or minimize the impact of the reduction in choices that it's going to have on the quality of your own life. You have the choice to say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to not. Okay. One choice is really easy to make, but I'm going to tell you it's going to be an unpleasant one. The consequences are going to be unrealized until it's too late to escape them. Okay. But at that point, you're going to say, well, what happened? Why didn't anybody tell me? Well, I told you. Oh, but you didn't want to listen. Actually, I tried to tell you and you shut me up before I could even finish telling you. Okay. And so they're just going to blame somebody else instead of blaming themselves. Okay. But in the end, their lack of resistance just made it quicker and easier for the enemy to implement. Let's at least make it difficult. Let's make them have to earn it. Okay. If somebody's going to take something from you, if somebody's going to come to your house and steal all your possessions, make them earn it. Okay. Don't just lay there on the ground and let them take all your food and your possessions and your wife and kids and walk off. Okay. The other thing I like to say is, if you're in a street fight, do you wait until you're on the ground being punched bloody and somebody's got their knees on both of your arms and they're choking the last bit of life out of you before you say, well, I don't consent to that. I don't consent to that. No, it's too late at that point. Okay.
Yeah.
You will not be able to overcome the disadvantage that you're at. Okay. So the idea is stop them early, put your hands up and say no. And that could be either verbally or through your actions or a combination of the two, or through getting physical if you have to, maybe. But the point is, if you roll over, you're not going to like the outcome.
Yep. And Dennis, my father said something many years ago to me that I never forgot. He said, if you're going to live by principles, you're not going to have an easy life. You're going to have a difficult time. And then there was sort of a ... And I would like to finish that sentence with live them anyway. Live your principles anyway. Friends, it's not coming. We're well into it. It's here. Okay.
It's here.
It's here. We're in. We have leapt off the cliff. We are here. It is here. We are in it. Okay. Decide who you are. Decide what aligns with and serves who you are. What side are you on? What do you believe in? What are your limits? What are your principles? What is your highest being? Okay. What are you willing to fight for and defend? And what are you willing to kneel and capitulate to? And again, that will vary between different people for so many reasons, as we've acknowledged. But my friends, let us not be slaves. Let us not lay back in laziness, apathy, helplessness, victimhood, and all that bull, and let the tyrants steamroll over us. I'm sorry, I'm not ultra pacifist in that way. I believe that we not only have our divine birthright of sovereignty, but it comes with a duty to defend it. And those who don't will immediately lose it, and they will increase the chances that those around them will have to fight harder and more likely to lose theirs as well. Having said all this stuff about our existence in this world and how the tyrants are stepping on our neck and have every intention of eliminating as many of us as possible and corralling and enslaving and controlling the rest, this is not eternity here. This is not our eternal home. We are not in these bodies eternally and all of that. This is the limited, temporary, current realm that we occupy, but it is not the universal, eternal all. So in defending your sovereignty and defending your family and defending your liberties and your rights, never, ever compromise the purity of your soul in doing that. Do not ever forsake the divine and pure nature, essence, and being of the soul that you are for the sake of winning a fight here in the limited temporal physical realm that we currently are hanging out in. But within that realm, you have every right to defend your sovereignty, your purity, and your liberty, and your dignity. So the focus of our conversation has been about the tyranny of the world and all their tricks and their motives and how it's been affecting us, and we have all been affected by it. And the very strong premonition that many of us have that there's a whole lot coming down the pike that's been in the works that's probably worse. Hopefully things end up being better as a result afterwards, after the storm breaks, that fresh sunshine smell, in the air, the phoenix and all that kind of stuff. But I just don't think that we're going to snap our fingers and get there. I think we've got quite a storm ahead of us. That's why I have been giving the platform to these topics in recent months, because although they are difficult and even unpleasant, they are very real. They are very serious, and we have to be aware of them, and they need to be discussed, and to the ability that we have, resolved. And so, Dennis, I want to wrap it up with that, and thank you so much. You've been a wonderful guest. You're a great guy. You are one of the most principled and intelligent and knowledgeable people that I know. I want to thank also the viewers who have stayed with us to the end here, and I hope that you've gotten meaningful, valuable, practical worth and help from our conversation. And I hope that it inspires you to engage in meaningful action now in your life for your family and anyone that's under your care. Closing words from Dennis.
And in closing, Brian, I thank you endlessly for inviting me on here and having me as a guest, giving me a platform, just letting me speak in an unadulterated way. And I've seen a lot of your content, and it's great stuff. And I hope your followers will not only take to heart what we're saying, and give an honest listen and an honest evaluation of what you're hearing from us, but hopefully you'll spread the word, because this needs to go out to a very broad segment of the population for it to have a real impact. But if it does, we can have an impact. What level of impact that's going to be is unknown. But in the end, we're in a death fight here. Okay, they're coming for our possessions, our bodies, our minds, and our souls. And we can either let them stomp on us, or we can defend what we have. The
Dennis,
choice is ours.
You're absolutely right. And Dennis, we have addressed this general topic from a very practical and here and now standpoint, but make no mistake about it, no matter how religious or spiritual anybody is, we are absolutely deep in the throes of a spiritual war that is after our free will. And as I said in the mega episode on evil, anything that would hijack, thwart, or usurp your free will is evil. It is the earmark, the calling card of evil is to deny you your free will. And so if you're ever unsure and you're discerning, if your free will is being commandeered and usurped, it is coming from evil. You are a sovereign, divine emanation of the source, God, that you came from and to whom you will return, no matter what your personal theological and spiritual beliefs are, and yada, 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 yada. The general statement is that we are deep in a spiritual war. Arm yourself, defend yourself, be vigilant, take action, be of good courage.
Amen.
Amen.